Good afternoon. This is the partner training for December 11, 2018. What you're looking at right now is the agenda for today. What we will go through is converting an opportunity to project. We'll also take a look at creating and editing your project team. Then we will do two different ways to create a PO. The first will be from a quote, and then also creating a PO from scratch. And lastly, we'll go through tracking meeting minutes using that functionality within a project. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and jump into it here. The opportunity that we're going to focus on is this CORS training room project. It's this last one here. And I'm going to go ahead and double click to enter into it because there's going to be a couple of things that I want to check on before we do go ahead and convert to project. I will also note that you can convert to project directly from this page by highlighting this and clicking this convert to project button, but we are going to use the other option within the opportunity itself. So we came in here on the info page. What I'm just going to take a quick look for is to make sure that all of our required fields are filled in. We'll have to have everything marked in red here completed before we convert to project. And the other two things that I want to check before converting to project are here under the quotes tab. And I want to make sure that I've got a quote forecasted. The reason we want to check this is because this is going to provide us a snapshot in time of when this quote or the values and this quote that was forecasted here at the opportunity stage. So because we've got one here checked as yes, then we are good to go. And the last thing that I'm going to check before we convert to project is the schedule. So I just want to review the schedule, make sure that I've got something here, or if I don't, I just know what our schedule looks like, because when we convert to project, we'll have the option to stick with our current schedule, which is what we're going to do today, or we can also override it. So I know if I've just got a couple of schedule items that I created here that I don't intend to keep, I just want to make sure I know what I was working with going into it. So with those two checks complete, I'm going to go back to the info page and go ahead and click this convert to project button. So we click that. We got the decision date here. It's always going to default to our current date. So if this was one today, we can just leave it as is. If it was decided earlier this week or maybe last week and we're just now converting it to project, you can of course change that. I'll just go ahead and mark this as December 7th because we're saying we'll do this a little bit after the fact. Then we've also got a couple of other items up here. So the opportunity name, project number, the DIRT opportunity number, estimated award date. If any of that has changed since you last entered it, you do have the opportunity to edit it here. The next piece is the primary success factor. So I'm going to just go ahead and call this one relationship. If we have any win comments, like any particular notes that are relevant to this, you can add them here. The reason the primary success factor here is a required field is because it's used for the reporting. So over here on this tab where my cursor is, you can go to the reporting and you can see why you're winning various different opportunities. So it definitely encourage you to pick one of these categories versus the unknown, because it'll be a little bit more meaningful if you take a look back at your reporting later. So once we are all set with the details here, you can go ahead and click convert to project. And then that will begin the 5-step process to get us to the project stage. So before we get into each of the fields here and each of the steps, I just want to point out what the steps are. The first is the company information. The vendor setup will be next. The project team is third. The delivery information is fourth. And the owner information is last. So that just gives you a general idea about what sort of information we're going to populate as we're going from this opportunity to project stage. Another note, just generally speaking, when it comes to converting an opportunity to project, is that if you don't have a piece of information, just go ahead and click to next. This isn't meant to be a long drawn out process in order to get from one stage to the other. The idea here is if you have a bunch of information that you are ready to input, you can input it now and it will save you having to go look it up down the road. But again, if you don't have it, don't worry about it, because you'll definitely have the opportunity to fill it in as needed down the road. So we're going to take a look here at the project name, the contract type, the building, street address, and all of that to make sure that's good. The building's blank here. We're just going to go ahead and add that. So we'll just call it headquarter building. Project number looks good. Project status being active. We can go ahead and change this from active if you know you'll be immediately jumping into one of these other stages. In this case, I'm going to leave it as active. And then this is what I was talking about for the schedule. So where are we going to create our schedule from? We're going to have three options here. The first is to use the existing schedule. So that's what I'm going to use to keep all those items that I had already created. We can also use a template. So that means if we've got some templates set up under the My Company page, we can use that and overwrite our existing schedule. Or if you don't intend to use the schedule out of Kinetic, you also have that option here. So make sure to select one of these before clicking ahead to the next page. Oops. So for our existing schedule, and then we're going to go ahead and click Save and Next. The next is our vendor setup. So this is the opportunity to add your architect and general contractor. Since this is required for every dirt order, once you've entered it once for your opportunity, you'll never have to enter it again. So if you entered this on the opportunity info, it will be pre-populated for you. Since we had left it blank there, I'm just going to go ahead and add the info. But like I said, if you don't have this information right now, you do not have to enter it. You can just go ahead and skip over it, and then you can just enter it once you're submitting your actual order. So for here, we've got our project team. So what pre-populates here is all of your named employees under My Company that are aligned to your partner. So we've got a bunch in here in the training environment. And then we also have order entry is automatically added. And you also have your dirt PM, which is automatically added. So if you do need additional people beyond that, you can go ahead and add them in here. And the same thing at the bottom. If you have other vendors that you want to either have access to your project within Kinetic, if you've granted certain vendor employees access, you can do that by adding the vendor and the vendor employee up here. And you can also add any other vendors that you know you're going to want to select on RFQs, RFIs, submittals, etc. I'm just going to go ahead and click next because we're going to spend a minute on the project team once we get to the project stage. One quick note, actually, on page 3 here. You also have this option to notify the project team. So if you click this, this is going to send out an email to everyone on the project team with a link back to Kinetic to let them know, hey, this opportunity is now converted to a project, and you can go in and do the pieces that you are responsible for within this. So next, our delivery information. Again, this is something that if you have it already and it's a known item, so if you know exactly where everything is going to be delivered to, you can fill that out. So if it's going to go to the job site, you can select that from the drop-down warehouse, install team warehouse, or other. These will populate for you. So dropping it to the job site, the information that we had filled out in step 1 will populate here. And if you have any other known items related to your delivery, you can go ahead and fill them out here. Like I said, this is the option to pre-populate these. So you'll have the option to fill them out once you get to the place where you're ready to submit your order. And you can, of course, do that under the orders page within a project. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this page, but you can do this if you've got pre-ship, and then if you have any other special requirements, so like special skids, the skids need to be stackable. If there's any other special delivery information, you can see that as we flag these, we're getting additional delivery notes here. So if you are using them, I would highly recommend that you go ahead and open these up and apply or update this description here for the specifics of your situation. Same thing here. You can also pick a delivery contact at this point if it's already a known item for you. Once you're good to go with this, go ahead and click Save and Next. And then our last step here is the owner end user information. So what this is pulling in is the CRM address from your client. And what you want to do is just go ahead and double check to make sure all of this stuff is good to go. Or if it needs to be a different address for your end user, like if this really needs to be the job site, you can switch that over to that as well. You can also add a client contact here as part of your end user information. So once you are all set with this, you can go ahead and click Save and Finish Setup, and this is going to take us to our project. So it's as easy as that to get it from that opportunity to project stage. So you can see we've got the same opportunity here, but it is now a project. So we'll have all of our project management tools here, as well as the items from when it was an opportunity. So the first thing I always recommend people do once getting to the project stage is to go ahead and make sure to designate a quote as final. So you can see these numbers are blank here. And when you designate a quote as final, that is what the system will use to populate it. So I'm going to click this here. I know this is the one that had the highest value, and it was the one that we designated as forecast. And I'm going to click designate as final. So this leads us into our next part to create a PO. And this is the way, this is the first way to create a purchase order. And this is by pushing your quote over to a PO. It's going to give you this option once you designate a final quote. And we're going to have a couple options here within our purchase order. So we can select several of these lines to push to purchase order. We can push just the ones with companies over, or we can push literally all lines over to purchase orders. And it's going to create one purchase order per vendor. So we'll get one for dirt, we'll get one for these blank lines, we'll get one for these other 3 vendors as well. The one other thing that I want to point out here before we pick one of those options is that you can also have the option to include tax or not include tax when you push it over. So if you know certain items should not have the tax included when you're issuing your purchase order, all you have to do is flip this from yes to no. There's no need to click a save button or anything like that. Once you've switched it, that is all you needed to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip this to no for our dirt lines here as well. Oops. I guess I double clicked one of those. So what we got is just that one line pushed over, but let me pull that back up again so we can do it the right way. The way to do it, if you do dismiss that page at first, is you can open up your finalized quote and you can click this push to PO button at the bottom and we'll get that same option again. So we've got all these lines again. What I want to do is make my tax not editable on this. And now let's go ahead and push all of our lines to purchase orders. So it's nice work, and it tells me how many POs were created and what vendors they were created for. So you've got our window film, glass supplier, the blank lines here that did not have vendors. We can assign the vendors at that purchase order, as well as subcontractors and dirt. So we're good to go here, and let's take a look where you can find those purchase orders in the application. So, and that's going to be up here under the POs tab. The other place to find your purchase orders is over here. This is going to show you all of your purchase orders across all companies within Kinetic, or all projects within Kinetic. So we can see that we doubled up on this dirt environmental solutions one because I had accidentally double clicked it. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that guy. But when we open up our purchase order here, really almost all of it is already filled out for us. We've got our vendor selected. We've got our status just started as proposed. We can move it to pending, received, approved, or issued. And then we can also add a delivery deadline, and we can also come back into our purchase order to mark it as the products are received. This is just a way for you to track the progress of your project as it moves through the different stages. We also have the delivery information. So again, you're going to have those same 4 options: job site, warehouse, install team, warehouse, or other, on what address needs to be on your purchase order for submitting it. And then once you're good on all of this, we've got no tax here because we selected no on that, and that's what we want. If there's any notes that we want to include in here, we can add those or update this as needed. And then once we're all set, we just go ahead and click this Create PDF, and we've got our purchase order that's ready to be issued. And I'll go ahead and just pop this open just so we can take a quick look at it. One of the nice things about this is that you always got a standard purchase order format when putting it through here. So you've got your logo. This would be your company's logo, which is managed in the My Company page, your address for your partner, the project, et cetera, all the way down to the bottom here where you've got your values. So we'll go ahead and also create a purchase order from scratch. It's pretty easy to do, in my opinion, once you're familiar with it. So once you create a new purchase order, you've got the same fields at the top, but of course we're going to have to select a vendor to start with. And we can see that we've just got the vendors from our project team here. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick Architect 1 as our vendor for this one. We'll pick our delivery location again. All of this stuff is really intended to be as easy as possible for you to pick and update. And then we'll add our purchase order items. So we'll just call it line item 1. Our quantity is 1. The unit cost, we'll just say, is $10,000. And if there's any tax, we can add tax on here as well. So you add all of your line items in as needed, add your notes, and then once you're good to go, you've got all the information in here as needed. You can create your PDF again. And I'm just going to go ahead and click Save because that PDF will look very similar to the previous one. So taking a look back here at our agenda, we went ahead and converted our opportunity to project, and we skipped down here to create our purchase order. The next thing I wanted to review is going through our project team. So what we'll do is we'll add team members from DIRT. We'll add vendor employees who we might want to grant access to this project, like if they are going to be the team that is installing our actual project for us and we want them to submit status reports. This is how you grant them access to the project in order to do that. And then lastly, we'll also set the various roles that are available to you under the project team, such as your project manager, your DIRT PM, and all of that. So we'll go over here to this project team page. And as I mentioned, this project team page is very important because it's going to define what people flow through to be assigned to various items within your project. So I would recommend, as far as internal employees, it's better to have more people on here than fewer, because if you're trying to, say, assign a task or an RFQ or something like that, if you want to copy them on an email, they have to be on this project team in order for you to select them. So we've got 3 ways to add people on here. So the new, that's going to be for a new vendor. New DP user, that's going to be to add people who are in your My Company page that are internal employees. And then the third one here is for new DIRT users. So if you have a DIRT PM that's assigned to My Company, they'll already be added here. But if you have some other DIRT people that are going to be specific to this project, you can go ahead and add them here just as easy as clicking new DIRT user and double clicking on the person that you want to have added. The next thing I want to show you is adding a vendor employee. So we'll go ahead and click new here. This is going to give us a list of all the vendor employees that we have added within Kinetic. And the one that I'm going to add is, we're going to say Shane Subcontractor is going to be added. So this is going to be the person that we want to grant access. They're going to be doing our installation for us here. So we've got Shane Subcontractor added. And when we did that, it automatically added the vendor here as one of our project partners. So you don't have to do it in both this top section for people. You don't have to also manually add it to companies. It'll do that automatically for you. For the project partners, let me show it to you the other way around, because it does work slightly differently if you add a vendor without adding an employee first. So we'll use this install vendor just as our example. When we add them, it is not going to automatically add anyone to this top section. So if you do want a specific person within that vendor to have access, just make sure to add them up here, and then you'll be all set. the last part that I want to take a quick look at is assigning our lead PM, our op owner, dirt PM, and all of that stuff. So the biggest note here that can cause confusion occasionally is that in order to select someone from one of these roles, they need to be as part of the project team before. So when we click for this dirt PM, we're only going to have the option to select the dirt people who are already assigned to this project team. So when we click it, instead of getting that list of 10 or so dirt employees that we have set up in the training environment, we only have the 4 that are already on this project team in here. So we can go and select them. If you realize at this point that you don't have the person that you're looking for, all you have to do is come back to this new dirt user, add them to your project, and that way you can add them up here to one of these individual roles. Probably the 2 most important roles within here are going to be your dirt PM and your dirt tech. The reason I call those the 2 most important roles is because there are a couple of things, or there's, in order to submit a chargeback, you do have to have your dirt PM and your dirt tech assigned before you're able to submit that. So once you are all set with everything on here for all of your roles, we'll just make this Shane subcontractor. Once you are all set for everything on your roles, just make sure to go down to the bottom left here, click save, and that'll ensure all the updates you've made have now been saved. The last thing we'll take a look at today is going to be meeting minutes. We'll take a quick look at this. So over here for your project meeting minutes, I'm going to click new, and we're going to see, all right, we've got the space to include all of our information related to our meeting minutes, and we can also include related documents. So if you had a PowerPoint or a Word document that was being reviewed at this meeting, you can add that to your related documents. This works similar to other places within the application. You just select the files that are relevant for you. Click open, they'll upload. You can see that they have successfully uploaded when they populate in this list here, and you're good to go there. So we flip back over to our meeting minutes. We'll just say this is our weekly meeting to view open items. We'll say that the meeting date was in fact for today. And then we've got our check marks here for what the topics were that were discussed. So was it the schedule? We'll say yes for that. We'll say that there was also some design items because this project is still pretty new. We want to make sure that we're all squared away at. And you can select anything else, of course, here that is relevant for you. The meeting attendees, as I mentioned, that project team is very important. So make sure that you've got everyone on the project team who might be attending this meeting. You can just pick and multi-select as needed for the people who are going to be attending. That'll populate them here. And then we've got our meeting notes. So what were the items related to the schedule that we were discussing? What were the items related to design that we were discussing? And then I think we've all had that meeting before where at the end, you're like, okay, great. We felt like we discussed, we accomplished a lot, but what were our action items again? You've got this section down here just for that so that you can put out all the items that do require follow-up. And then once you're good to go with that, you can just click send email, and it's going to send out a PDF that includes all of your meeting notes, your action items to everyone who is on that meeting attendees list. So I'll just go ahead and click that, and also create the PDF so we can take a quick look at what that looks like. So we've got our meeting minutes. We can see what items were discussed. We can see who attended. And then, of course, we've got our meeting notes, which whatever you include here will be included. Since I left it blank, it is, of course, blank. And then the all-important action items. So that brings us to the end of our prepared section, and I will hang on after this for any questions.